Laura is from Brazil. As I said, she's not just the founding member and one of the leaders of our Prenatal Alliance organization, but also she's such a mother. She's done such fabulous work all her life with ANEP, the organization in Brazil. And when Laura speaks, I feel I'm just being comforted. You know, I feel it's like my mama's voice is speaking to me. Laura's talk today with us is on psychohistory, a new perspective. Laura tells us how history doesn't usually register what went on in the homes and playgrounds of a nation. It registers the life of monarchs, their battles and politics, their deeds and conquests. Laura will talk about what is psychohistory, the studies of childhood, starting from the prenatal period, especially how children were treated. Its findings are astounding and sobering. Our atavistic luggage is a very heavy one. Did I get that right?
Hello, Yukta. Hi, you all. What a joy to be here with you all today. Well, it is true, as you introduced it very well. We have all learned history in our history books, and it's always about the winners, about how to conquer, how to invade, how to do politics and economics. So it's important for us to know that these are consequences. I'm trying to open here my presentation, and how it all started. How does a politician, a king, a queen, a tyrant, how do they come into power? Who were they as babies? And that's what Lloyd Demoss studied. And he created, in the 20th century, an extraordinary field for history. And I'm going to bring you, and it's not easy. The news we have, you know, historians, when they study something, they only work with facts. And that's very important. So here I am sharing my screen. Okay, it's coming. And as they come with facts, they can only relate to things that were written somewhere in a church, in a city hall, in some authoritative source. So it's the study, psychohistory is the study of psychological motivations of historical events. I believe most of you are not familiar with psychohistory. This is a picture of Lloyd Demoss, and I had the privilege of meeting him in a conference of APA, the Association for Pre- and Perinatal Psychology and Health. It was in the 90s in San Francisco. So this American social thinker, a historian, psychohistorian, he was born in September of 1931. He did study political sciences at Columbia University and became a psychoanalyst, but he was not an MD, so no medical training, so he was called a lay psychoanalyst. So he founded this extraordinary field of history. And as you said, Yukta, the historians usually ignore what happens in homes and playgrounds. Well, psychohistory studies how each generation of parents and children engender the tangles that show up later in the public arena. So our question here is, which is the emotional origin of social and political behaviors of groups and nations, of past and present? Well, this is why psychohistory has studied childhood and family, especially abuse toward children, and research in psychology and anthropology. Well, I'm sorry to deliver those news, but the history of childhood is a nightmare from which we are only recently waking up. The more we go back in history, the more common it is to kill children, abandon them, spank them, terrorize them, and sexually abuse them. So we had an extraordinary introduction with Dr. Chital of what is the Garb Sanskar, a book written thousands of years ago. The messages we deliver at Prenatal Alliance, it's such a clear one, a simple one. Why is it that we find so much resistance from professionals, from the general public, from the media? Why not to look into that? Why don't they want to disseminate as a victory all the findings that Prenatal Alliance bases its work on? Well, the information we all have from long ago, like an atavic information, is very heavy. We know that intrauterine experiences will guide the formation of our brain's neurocircuitry. So we have what's called epigenetics. The atmosphere a mother is gestating in will orchestrate the development of the very genetic material we have. But we are belligerent. We are so aggressive as a species. Even Konrad Lorenz won a Nobel Prize, medicine Nobel Prize, with his book on aggression. Aggression was considered the very sign of our progress and capacity for survival on Earth. But no, it's based on the biological reality, but we can adopt it, of course, as the violence of a chimpanzee, or we can also have the compassion of an orca. It depends on what we experienced in the womb and during early childhood. Lloyd DeMose says that prenatally we learn a whole drama, a whole story of how to live. And in childhood, we will play with all these notions we learned in the womb. And later, in the political arena, in our professional arena, we'll act out what we have internalized since pregnancy. So the way we are formed and cared for will impact on how we express our instincts. Our experiences will build a bridge between instincts and behavior. And we can manifest that whole energy as creativity, innovation, and leadership does not need to be always anger and aggression. Well, we need to summon some courage and acknowledge that monsters are born from battered and neglected children. Only then we will be free to help human beings express their best qualities. Every time there is a shooting in a school, there's a big complication, an upheaval with cruelty. I'm thinking about some revolutions as the Khmer in Cambodia. Can we look into how these human beings came into being? How was their time in the womb and their early childhood? Every time we look into that, we find out a huge amount of disharmony. Because we're not born, according to psychohistory, to choose violence as the only solution for our quarrels or resources or territory. We were brought up to fight nature, to dominate and exploit it, instead of learning how to love it, how to live in harmony with it, feeling part of it. And the mind and the heart of those welcomed with empathy at the very start of life will not choose later on a violent or egocentric life, narcissistic life. So to reduce social violence, we must reduce the negligence and violence against all pregnant women, babies, and children. And the destiny of a civilization is based on how it treats its children. So this idea is founded on concrete data, and its implications demand our utmost attention. The book of Robin Grill, Parenting for a Peaceful World is a great book on psychohistory. He is the person who best translated the thinking of Lloyd de Moss and explored it, even when one by one of the countries of the Eastern Europe, these countries were stepping into a democracy. They didn't do that all at the same time. And you can see in his book, he explains that, how 30, 40 years before stepping into a democracy, each of these nations had already started changing the way they would consider children. They affirm that the global problems we face today are of psychological origin, and they stem from abusive relationships with others and the environment. So, wars, destruction, degradation of the environment, poverty, and all kinds of social diseases, they are the very symptoms of emotional wounds in our leaders caused by dysfunctional relationships and poorly developed emotional and social intelligence. This gives us kind of hope, because then we could do something. Look at this, pollution. Around the world, an average of 2 million people die every year just due to air pollution. So it kills more than wars, terrorism, and homicides. Who are we to neglect air, water, earth? I mean, where do we have our mind when the solutions we apply to our nations disconsider the importance of breathing, of drinking, of partaking communion with earth and all the food it gives us? Well, our violence against nature has become a problem, even more urgent than the violence amongst ourselves. So here we have wars versus the environment. So just during the first decade of this 21st century, in less than 2 weeks, the United States spent what they spent during more than 1 year for the management and manutention of the fishing and wildlife sectors and national parks. I mean, going to war was 30 times more important than preserving the environment. Lloyd de Moss devised many styles of parenting, and the most prevalent one till the, I must say, till the 16th, 17th century was infanticide. We used to kill our children. Perhaps we were these children who were killed. Perhaps we were these parents who were killing their children as a means of contraception. And this was so huge. As a bonus material, those attending the Prenatal Alliance Summit will have a presentation by Carla Machado and myself. Carla is the president of ANEP, which is our national association here in Brazil for prenatal education. And you will see about these modes of parenting. So this kind of violence is a learned answer passed on from generation to generation. We're talking about the violence against the environment. We'll be able to create the societies we wish for once we'll understand how the relationship patterns of each citizen emerge from their early childhood emotional development. So we're only right now and only at the fetal stages, says Lloyd de Moss, of a global change of awareness necessary to preserve the ecological viability of our planet. And our very survival depends on learning more emotionally intelligent ways, socially and spiritually intelligent ways to relate with each other and with the environment. So each step toward the betterment of children's lives accelerates the process of a nation's democratization. As time went by little, child-rearing modalities became more affectionate, and the result was a big step toward greater democracy and greater social justice. The social evolution we enjoy today is the product of an evolution in child-rearing practices. One doesn't happen without the other. To be a father, to be a mother, I mean, there are parenting modalities more in our species than in any other species. And we're just now exiting survival times defined by the fittest and the strongest, usually children of the most cruel and pitiless parents, domineering. And we're entering times defined by the survival of the most innovative and cooperative, children of the most loving parents. Parents who have the interest of their children in mind all the time. So when we bring up a child, we educate the world. We educate the world's future. So a rapid social evolution of human beings is possible thanks to the extended period of nurturance in our species. It doesn't take just 3 months or 5 months or a year to educate our children. That time of nurturing and nurturance goes on for much longer. So I'm here quoting Ina May Gaskin. When we as a society begin to value mothers as the givers and supporters of life, then we see social change in ways that matter. So we look forward to sustainability and the ways we relate to our children collectively, as a whole, all of us around the world, is the key for a future of peace and sustainability. So let's open avenues for the coming of a golden age on our planet. So please remain with that message from Psychohistory. The main condition for the advent of a sustainable and peaceful world is to zeal for children's well-being and emotional development. Only then will we establish healthy and thriving nations. And it all starts in the womb. In the womb, we will understand what we have to get ready for here. So if we're getting ready for a life of connection and collaboration, for a life filled with enchantment and wonder throughout life, even through hard times, we will try to find the wonders of every situation. Thank you. I'm now, Yukta, open for questions, if there are some.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You've touched upon a very, very potent point. Rather the very question, I think, which a lot of people have. How can we change the whole, really the dynamic of how the world is functioning today, and where do women stand empowered in this whole process? So we have a few questions. Heliet Neil, if I've got that correct, says, Laura, which would be the first step to change this path of violence to a path of creating harmony? And
Yeah.
I'll combine that with the next question from Olga, who's asking, could you speak about the paradox? How is it that although there is so much known and disseminated about the impact of prenatal sciences, why is there an increase in violence amongst our youth?
Yeah. Olga, we have the knowledge, but we don't apply it collectively. And Eliette, in order for me to be altruistic, to see the other, in order for me to have long-term thinking, to have empathy, I need a specific brain circuitry. As a human being, I am here on earth to unite heaven and earth, yes, but for that I have an instrument, my body. And it's that instrument which is made and formed and grows in the woman's body, in her womb. And she is the atmosphere that will allow me to be born with great neurocircuitry, really ready to see the other, understand, listen to, never to bully. What happens when the child bullies another child? The bully will not be able to decipher the signs of, oh no, no, please not, the signs of suffering in the other. So empathy, compassion, it belongs to neocortex activities. When pregnancy is marred with anxiety, when pregnancy has more cortisol than oxytocin, the very little neuron, just newborn, going to establish its network somewhere in our brain, doesn't reach that optimal level and builds its network underneath. And we have a poor neocortex. We have a poorly inhabited neocortex. The connections are not well made. The best gift a couple can give a baby in the prenatal stage is an optimal formation of brain circuitries, so health throughout the whole body. So the child comes and already is able to see the other. And through adulthood and health, psychological health will be amazing. Yukta, I don't know if you agree with me, but prisons and psychiatric hospitals, for me, are two institutions that we should not have. We should not give birth to people who one day will end up in jail, in prison, or in a psychiatric hospital. We are responsible, society is responsible, so that those who come, the newcomers, will be in communion with life and not ostracized somewhere in an establishment.
I absolutely agree with you. And we must be able to find that level of depth and conviction within ourselves to find the pathway to these people who've lost psychiatric ward or to prisons, as you're saying. That too is a way of saying we're disconnecting with you. We don't want to know about you. And there may be programs in place for them, but as a society, that they ended up feeling so isolated, they didn't find that connection.
Yes, a
So
pregnant
Sheila
mother.
Scramoli asks this question.
Yeah, just
She
one
wants
second.
to
A
know,
pregnant mother
work
should
with
be at the
adults.
top
Sorry.
of society. A pregnant mother should be at the top of society. We should be inspiring her. But yes, sorry, Sheila, what is her question, love?
She says she works with adults past the childbearing years. The work is to reconstellate our personal prenatal narrative with the time story of cosmogenesis. Is this topic included in psychohistory? I'm not sure if that's
I
right.
am
Time.
sure, yeah, I am sure that that topic would be very interesting to Robin Grill, the psychotherapist, the author of Parenting for a Peaceful World. Because yes, there is much we can do in education. There is much. I mean, I would not even dare bringing such a theme if we were not into this. This last parenting modality is the collaborative one. We're here with the kid, for the child. And there is much hope, but we have to take matters into our own hands, because the mode of killing the children and abandoning the children still exists. Every mode goes on existing, but new ones are coming. And now we are being much less violent toward children as a whole, but there's still much work to do. And yes, Olga, your collaboration is very important. I love your books for children. And children should know about prenatal already, the way we know. It should not be something just for the adult or the teenager. Even children should be able to play with these notions of the importance of life in the womb.
Laura, my question to you is, maybe we can conclude with this. How do we bring, when we say we want pregnant women to be the epicenter and have that importance in culture, in society, how then protect them from the violence that they, or through a very hostile work environment, or something from their own childhood that's coming up as a trauma when they become mothers? I mean, there's so many layers to it, But instead of prisons, if we were ending up to have a space, a safe space for pregnant mamas to come and go through their processes, how would you give me your most ideal dream world situation?
Yes, we could speak for hours on that. And yes, we don't become suddenly totally aware of everything just because we're pregnant. But step by step, if our environment is protected, as you say, places surrounded by nature and the togetherness of with other women and their babies in womb, we could, especially places if they could go and stay the time they want, the time they need, weeks, months, days, hours, but they could sing in choirs. They could, you can address problems, but you can also enhance health. I would see those parks, those places in nature in every country. This was the dream of Omram Mikhail Ivanov. He said, I have a plan for politicians, because he would come with all this spiritual knowledge about the power of the inner life of every pregnant woman. And he said, I would have extraordinary parks where women would have access to art, to beauty and fountain and flowers and plants and rivers. And I see many solutions leading to that. Here in Brazil, we have a center open only during the day, but with pregnant women. It belongs to the government. It is free for every woman who's pregnant. And they can spend the day there having reflexology, circular dancing, meditation, yoga. So give the best our society has to offer to these women who are pregnant. So from a little center like the one we have in Brazil to extraordinary parks. If our attention goes to that, I even think about choirs for pregnant women, lots of oxytocin because of the singing. Little by little, we'll have better and better ideas. But let's look toward them as our treasure. They have in their womb our future, the future of our nation, of our nature, of our art and culture. So let's offer her the best we can, the best we have.
Art and culture. I'll take that from you as our we can follow for mamas who are getting pregnant, are pregnant, have babies. Yes, I think that we would love to see them in nature, experiencing a lot of dance and joy, and peacefulness, safety, bondedness, sisterhood. Yeah.
Joy. I think you said
Thank
the
you, Laura.
final
Thank
word,
you for
the most important word, the final one, you just said it. Joy. It's about joy, not knowledge, pregnancy.
joy.
Let's live joyously so that children will be equipped for joy throughout life.